Two balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk the ball. Chris Taylor.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Matthew Moreno, Blake Williams. We appreciate all the folks joining us live on YouTube and Facebook every Sunday night right here at 7:10 p.m. To those joining us after the fact on YouTube or via podcast, Apple, Spotify, and Google. Thank you for joining us as well. Matt and Blake, good evening. Another Sunday in which the Dodgers win. Maybe not the most pretty week of all time, but hey, 13-game lead in the National League West, on pace still for more than 99 wins after taking 2 out of 3 from the Nationals. And hey, that magic number, Matt, down to 7. Do you care about the magic number?
I mean, yes and no. I guess it when you look at it now, down to 7, we're in a scenario where the Dodgers could wrap up the NL West this week, and yeah, I think that's an exciting time for fans. As much as maybe it's grown a little bit old for some in the fan base, I think it should always be celebrated and appreciated. And I think we saw in 2021 that as much as the Dodgers have sort of reigned over the NL West, you never know what can happen in any given year. And so, that'll be nice for them to kind of check that box off, get to celebrate a little bit, and then keep trying to forge ahead amid some of the various issues, I guess I'll put it that way, that I know we're going to discuss tonight that sort of hover over the team.
Yeah, also joining us is one of the 3 people left on the Mac Jones bandwagon. That's our own Blake Williams, who's still wearing Patriots gear after they lose tonight. My Raiders alone in first place in the AFC West at 1-0. Blake's Patriots at 0-1 after I almost had to eat my words on that one. I was crapping all over Mac Jones, and he had the ball with the chance, but his receiver couldn't get feet down. But Blake, the Dodgers lose 3 of 4 last weekend to the Braves. It felt like the only thing they had left to play for was that number 1 seed, and then you lose 3 out of 4 to the Braves, and there's not even that to play for. And then they come out and they lose 2 in a row to the Marlins. They've now lost 5 out of their last 6. And I kind of, in hindsight, as a betting person, I sort of wish I would have bet against the Dodgers in that Marlins series because it made sense. It was like the one carrot that was still sort of dangling in front of them had been taken. That said, it was nice that after dropping the first 2 of the Marlins, they cruise in game 3. They take 2 out of 3 from the Nationals. And look, the Nationals stink. But I like Blake a little bit of a bounce back, taking 3 out of 4 after what had to be an incredibly disappointing Braves series and then maybe the hangover that came with it.
Yeah, I thought we were going to keep talking about football today because the Dodgers have mostly wrapped up their seeding. They're about to wrap up the division. There's not a whole lot going on with them. Like, they went 3-3 in the last week, but I mean, they're not going to get the number 3 seed. They're not going to get the number 1 seed. They're basically locked into that number 2 seed. And like we said, they can wrap up the division this week, and it would take a miracle for any team to catch them in the NL West. But yeah, they're in a good spot overall. So even though it wasn't the best week, it's still a good position to be in.
Well, I was going to try and avoid all football talk for the sake of our Patriots and Alabama fan down here at the bottom, Blake Williams. But, I figured I was just being nice. My teams were 2-0 this weekend. Matt's teams. Are you a Rams fan, Matt? Do you claim the Rams?
No, I don't care about the NFL.
Okay.
Football to me starts, well, I guess technically now with college football, it starts on Thursdays sometimes. So my football window is pretty much Thursdays to Saturdays. And so SC had a big win, and I'm good with that.
There we go. All right. Well, let's talk. I mean, Blake, let's talk real quick. The weather. I hear you enjoyed all of the rain that the Dodgers have experienced in the last week. Is that true?
Yeah, it's been great. I ended up covering a full game because I think Matt got a USC ticket, you were saying. So he was at the game, and I got to cover their whole extra innings, 7-hour total game from the original start time. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, when you see like a 4-hour rain delay, just think of the beat writers. And maybe more so, the beat writers are there. Like, think about the people that are at home and have to just put their whole life on. I mean, like, they're not out of the house. They're in the house, putting everything on hold for that one. And and then they lose in extra innings, Blake, just for the cherry on top. There's nothing better than a 7-hour, 11-inning loss to the Washington Nationals, right?
Yeah, and they kept changing my recap too. That was the worst part because they tied it in the 9th inning. So then I had to change that they could win. And then they took the lead in the 10th, and then they gave up the lead and tied it in the 10th, the bottom of the 10th, and then lost it in the 11th. So there's a lot of changing the recap and doing rewriting in that last 30 minutes or so.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you and your service to DodgerBlue.com while Matt got to enjoy a USC football game. But let's get into this one. Again, the Dodgers, I think I just want to reemphasize, there's the potential for this to feel like it's going to go sideways in some of the conversations we're about to have when it comes to starting pitching, when it comes to injuries. I just want to start, let the first thing that you taste on this podcast be the fact that the Dodgers have a 13-game lead in the division, that they are on pace for 99 point something wins, and that their magic number is 7. They all but have the number 2 seed wrapped up. I'd have to go back and check exactly what their lead is. Last I looked, it was 6 or 7 games with 15 games to go. So a pretty safe number there for the Dodgers, it feels like. But let's get to some injury updates, because it does feel like before we get to starting pitching, this is kind of the thing that keeps stacking up. So let's start with some good news, Matt. That's Mookie Betts. He fouls the ball off his foot a few days ago. Expectation was that he was going to miss the entirety of the weekend series. They did an X-ray. It was negative. Then they announced they wanted to do an MRI. If you saw Mookie Betts' press conference or media availability, whatever you want to call it, yesterday, he was didn't seem super pumped about the fact that they even made him get the MRI. It comes back clean. And then the surprise, Matt, is he's back in the lineup today, a day earlier than we expected, which never happens with Dodgers injuries.
Yeah, that definitely was a pretty big surprise. But, I guess Mookie, I was definitely concerned with the whole situation. He left the stadium in Miami on crutches. He, like you said, the x-rays were negative, but then they were going to do additional testing on him to see. And so considering how all that was looking, I was worried that is there going to be a hairline fracture or something really small that's going to be that's going to come up. And, then at that point, we're looking at, he's out for the season. And then, maybe if they advance, yada, yada, yada in the playoffs. But yeah, best case scenario at that point was looking like maybe he's back at the start of the homestand on Monday. But, lo and behold, early, I guess not quite as early for them out there on the East Coast, but early for us on the West Coast. Lineup comes out and Mookie's in it and, played well. And I guess Dave Roberts said he went through some drills and stuff on Saturday and didn't already seemed to have recovered from some of the residual soreness. And so everything seems to be great on that end. I know Mookie, he was asked in that interview that you referenced if he was open to, maybe taking a rest, even if it was, just 3 or 5 more days for the sake of letting a bone bruise fully heal. The Dodgers, as we've discussed ad nauseum, are pretty much set in their standings. And he shot that down and said, no, he wasn't interested in that at all. And so, yeah, I mean, he's a fast healer, I guess.
Yeah, I loved his quote. They were like, how are you feeling? He's like, I mean, bruises hurt. Fouling a ball off of where he fouled it off seems like a really brutal, painful thing. And yet, Blake, here he is on a Sunday 10:30 a.m. game against the Washington Nationals coming back. That tells us everything we need to know about whether we should be worried about this injury, right? There's no chance. If there is a 1.1% chance of Mookie Betts making this worse, there's no way he's playing in this game against the Nationals on a Sunday, right?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think he's totally fine now. Are we still counting the Dodgers for getting the injury wrong, even though he came back earlier than they said?
Yeah, I think it's fair. I think if we're going to criticize them for, well, I don't know. I mean, Matt, I'll let you be the arbiter here. If they're wrong and they guess long and they're back earlier, maybe that shouldn't count.
Yeah, it's been a rough year for injury updates and predictions from them. So let's give them a win while they can get one.
There we go. Speaking of, real quick, I wanted to check Acuna back to minus 700 on MVP odds. So if you're tracking that kind of thing, which is interesting because Mike Petrello did a poll, I believe it was a week ago, of MLB executives. I can't remember exactly who it was, but it was 34-32 Acuna over Betts. So I think it's going to be close, but, do what you want with those odds. Matt loves the odds. He loves Vegas and, their ability to predict these things.
I won't rain on your parade in this show, but I'll leave it at the MVP race is over.
We'll see. Just need a couple good weeks from Mookie, just another little hot stretch. Joe Kelly, the other big sort of name on this list. We'll get to Peralta, who's kind of the new one here, but Joe Kelly had his second rehab appearance today for Rancho Cucamonga. Their account tweeted out kind of a funny moment for him. He retired the first 2 batters he faced on just 4 pitches. Apparently was hoping to come out of the game after that. The umpire said, hey, you've got to face 3 batters. And to show you how much rehab starts mean to these guys, they just intentionally walked somebody as a 3rd batter so that Kelly could get out. As far as we know, Matt, there's no reason to be concerned about 4 pitches and 2 batters. The last we heard is that Dave Roberts expects Joe Kelly to join the Dodgers in time for this Padres series. He won't pitch back-to-back days, so I'm guessing Tuesday he would be activated. Does that sound like a pretty reasonable timeline for you?
Yeah, I think that's still the plan, and I'm with you. I mean, it may have just been a scenario where they only wanted him to face 2 hitters for whatever reason. I'm hoping that there wasn't necessarily an injury issue. I don't think the Quakes Twitter account would also be sharing that kind of whole exchange if it was for an injury reason that he was coming out. So, yeah, I mean, Kelly, I think, should be back, probably Tuesday, maybe Wednesday at the latest, depending on how they want to shake out some of the bullpen decisions and usage and stuff like that.
Blake, do you think Joe Kelly, given everything that we know about, hey, he's going to be still sort of injured, won't be able to pitch back-to-back days is the reporting that we had gotten. Do you think he's going to be a major addition to this bullpen still, or are you kind of in wait-and-see mode over the next few weeks?
I think it's wait-and-see mode until we see what we get from him. It's really hard to say with injuries like that. He could come back and be great. He could come back and be awful. We don't really know, but I want to say regarding coming out early, if he did leave with an injury, he wouldn't have had to face the 3rd batter. So
True.
That does give me a little more confidence that he's not hurt and it was just kind of the plan.
And reportedly, he's been up at 100 miles an hour. So the velocity has not been an issue, which is the good news for Joe Kelly. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Dodgers bullpen later, but they're uniquely in a spot where I think he's going to slot in as a guy they trust, but they're in a good spot. So it's not like they're desperate for him in maybe the same way that the starting rotation would be desperate for some help. Peralta is the newest name on this list, Matt. He injured, felt pain in his hand during a swing, stayed in the game, and then got plunked on the elbow. It's listed as just a contusion now. It sounds like they did x-rays and those were negative. So the outlook on Peralta, even though he left today's game, Sunday's game early, it does seem like they're not too worried about this one.
Yeah, that was a painful plate appearance for him. He took I think it was a full swing, maybe a check swing. I think it was a full swing. Maybe he fouled the pitch off and then right away, kind of started looking at his right hand. Like you said, Dave Roberts and the Dodgers head trainer came out, checked on him, stayed in the game. Everything's good. And then next pitch just drills him right on the inside of his left elbow. And that's painful, dropped his bat right away. Roberts and the trainer went right back out there again. And pretty much immediately Dave signaled for the dugout and Kike ended up replacing him. And then Dave Roberts told reporters after the game, along with x-rays being negative, just that he saw swelling and the seams of the baseball on his elbow right away. And so obviously pulling him out was a no-brainer. Peralta's not, I guess, officially ruled unavailable yet for Monday's game against the Padres. I would be shocked if maybe he's available to pinch hit type thing. I just can't imagine it would be, you go from one afternoon of baseball seams being etched into your elbow to, being available the next day. But hey, I guess you never know.
Well, and Roberts, I think, even said that he expects him to be available for Monday's game. To your point, maybe that's off the bench. But the seams thing reminds me, when I played Little League, I have a twin brother. He tried to catch a foul ball with his forehead at one point, which was an interesting strategy instead of using his glove. And I'll never forget, 2 days later, the thing starts to scab and baseball seams were just etched into his forehead. Just an unbelievable moment. So yeah, use your glove, kids. That's the moral of the story here. 2 more updates. Yency Almonte expected to make a bullpen, to throw a bullpen, I should say, on Tuesday. Matt, we talked about this one briefly a couple days ago. Feels like a really long shot that Almonte is going to be able to gear up. I was kind of suggesting, if you play out the timeline, because it's a reliever and you don't need his 5 or 6 days in between appearances in the same way, I could see him up with the major league club as quickly as a couple weeks. But even then, you're up for maybe a week trying to audition for a bullpen that, as we're going to talk about a little bit later, feels like it's getting pretty crowded.
Yeah, like I said, I don't want to repeat myself too much, so I'll keep it brief and then I'll let Blake talk about his favorite position group. Yency, this is his first, bullpen session, like you mentioned, since his MCL sprain. And I just think he's going to have to do this probably at least a second time and then face hitters once or twice and then potentially do a rehab assignment. So I just feel like he faces kind of long odds to coming back. And considering the state of the bullpen, as you alluded to, Dodgers may be in a position where they're just not necessarily going to rush him along.
Yeah. Yeah, which at the beginning of the season, this was one of the guys I would have put in that back 3 or 4 that I actually had immense trust in. Obviously, it was a roller coaster for Yency. It'd be 5 or 6 good outings followed by a blow up that left his ERA just absolutely in shambles. So unfortunate for him, but hopefully, he gets a clean off season. He's the type of guy that, depending on a 40-man roster crunch, I'd be curious if the Dodgers, what they think of him long term. Is he still in their plans under team control? But I wonder if they get in a tight pinch on the 40-man roster, if Almonte's the type of guy that they would be willing to move in the right situation. So hopefully not for a number of reasons. I think the upside is there. Last one here is Gus Varland. And I'm coming to Matt just because Matt's sort of our Matt and Blake are both plugged in. Matt does more of the media sessions and that kind of thing. But Gus Varland goes on the injured list. Wander Suero comes back up, who I didn't even realize was still in the organization, but apparently is and is back on the 40-man roster. I mean, what do you make of the Varland news? Anything here?
Yeah, honestly, it surprised me this morning. Maybe Blake, since he ended up covering the Gus Varland walk-off loss last night. I don't know if he might have picked up on something. So I'll defer to you on this one.
So he threw the wild pitch and then went in the plate, and he kind of like laid out a little weird onto it. But I really think it was more of a phantom IL thing where they're going to need to call up a pitcher tomorrow. They just used a bunch of pitchers last night in an 11-inning game with multiple rain delays throughout the week. And they're just kind of like, hey, you can go down to the minors or we can put you on the phantom IL. You can keep collecting the major league check and we get to bring up another arm who probably going to go back down tomorrow and Suero, and they're going to call up Gavin Stone or whoever. And I just kind of see it as that kind of situation, like nothing to be concerned about.
Okay. Yeah,
well,
it makes. Okay.
They technically can do then two. If that's the case, they can do 2 moves because Yarbrough is going to go on paternity leave, so that'll be, I think, the Stone move, and then like Blake, like you said, Suero, they needed a fresh arm today, and and then Wander Suero pitched. I think he got 4 outs for them. I don't know how many batters he ended up facing, so he could be going down tomorrow, and so the Dodgers could have 2 new pitchers.
They're going to need a spot for Kelly too. So.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Joe Kelly. So yeah, maybe Suero's around for one more day, and then he's on his way. He's back to OKC potentially.
Yeah, and Yarbrough, you mentioned it. I didn't realize that he had his kid. 2 days later, pitches for the Dodgers, and then is going on paternity leave right when it was most convenient for the team. I mean, that is a team first guy right there.
Yeah, I think the way that sort of lined up worked out pretty well. I thought there was some talk that Yarbrough, sorry, I was spaced on his name for a second, was going to go on paternity leave today, and Gavin Stone was going to start or at least pitch bulk innings in Sunday's game. But I guess with the way everything worked out, and I think his wife is either based in Miami or like right around there. And so with the Dodgers playing the Marlins, he was able to hang around. And so, yeah, the timing of that seemed to work out pretty well for everybody.
Yeah, I see a bunch of questions in the chat. Michael Grove, the other guy that we didn't have mentioned, but he's also expected back this week. Is that right, Matt?
I believe so. I thought
Blake, are you nodding your head? Do you know the timeline on Michael Grove?
The last time I covered, Dave Roberts said in a week or so, and he would come back as a reliever, so they don't really need to stretch him out. So it should be pretty soon.
Yeah, it looks like he threw for the first time in a rehab outing 4 or 5 days ago.
Yeah, on the 7th.
It was 3 days ago, yeah.
It was 1 inning. He allowed three hits, 2 runs, had 3 strikeouts.
Okay. Yeah, and Roberts' quote was that they're expecting him back this homestand. So that could mean a lot of things, but exclusively going to be used as a reliever was kind of the key point. And I mean, the way they're building him up, that doesn't feel like something that they would change, even with all of the chaos in their starting rotation, which is where we're gonna head to next. So let's talk rotation, and this is the topic du jour of Dodger fans right now. It's the topic that our little group chat for DodgerBlue.com is constantly talking about. Blake and I, as you might expect, vehemently disagreeing about many of the things that we are about to talk about. But let me give you just sort of the state of the Dodgers rotation as it currently stands. So Clayton Kershaw is member number 1, was expected to pitch Monday, getting an extra day of rest to pitch Monday. That has now been pushed back to Friday. The Dodgers didn't really give a good reason why. They gave a reason. It's something about lining up matchups, which makes just about no sense for a team that is going to clinch everything. But Dave Roberts is going to give him basically, they're going to skip him once. So he'll get 8 or 9 days off. I believe he will pitch Friday. His last outing on Tuesday was not very good. 5 innings, 5 hits, 3 earned, 5 walks, 3 strikeouts. I had a stat that he had 5 walks in his previous months worth of start. It was only the second time in 3 or 4 years he had 5 walks. So that was Kershaw. Then you've got Emmett Sheehan, who was not particularly great. 4 1/3, 6 hits, 5 earned, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts. And that most of that damage came early on. I think he gave up 3 runs in the first inning of his start. Then you've got Bobby Miller. This is in no particular order, by the way, but Bobby Miller, 7 innings, 6 hits, 5 earned, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts. The 4th and 5th runs came his 4th time through the lineup in the back end. So while Sheehan's gave up all his early on, Bobby Miller, you could probably make a case that if he gets pulled when he probably should have gotten pulled, then that finishes as like a 3 earned run game. You've got Ryan Yarbrough for some role, 4 innings, 5 hits, 2 earned, 0 walks, 5 strikeouts this week. Of course, Ryan Pepeo, perfect game into the 7th, 7 innings, 1 hit, no earned, no walks, 3 strikeouts. And then Lance Lynn, the last member that is, I suppose, worth talking about here. 4 2/3, 7 hits, 8 earned, 3 walks, 1 strikeout. Not awesome stuff there. So, guys, those are, Kershaw, Sheehan, Miller, Pepeo, Lynn, 5 starting pitchers. Then you've got Yarbrough, who's kind of a bulk guy. Gavin Stone expected to be called up tomorrow, as we've talked about. He had a great last outing back on September 3rd for Oklahoma City. 6 innings, 1 hit, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. His last major league appearance was August 27th against the Red Sox. 6 innings, 5 hits, 4 earned, no walks, 2 strikeouts. But that was kind of a Bobby Miller situation where he comes back out for a 7th inning, and then gives up back-to-back home runs and then gets pulled. So it was a good 6 innings, a bad, whatever you want to call that, last 2 batters that he faced. So I think we can all agree on one thing, that this isn't awesome. Like, there's nothing to feel super awesome about when it comes to the Dodgers rotation. And I say that up front because I think it's important context to everything we're going to say. If we sound positive or optimistic about any of the 6 people, with maybe the exception of Ryan Pepeo and some Bobby Miller, it's probably should be taken relatively. Like, we may be, like, when you hear me talk positively about Kershaw, I want you to know, to the people in the comments, I do not think Clayton Kershaw is in peak Clayton Kershaw form. I just think relative to the other options that maybe Clayton Kershaw deserves to be talked about in a more positive light, for example. So I want to make that clear. Like, we don't think any of these guys are Walker Buehler, like, fully healthy a few years ago. Just give him the ball, 7 innings, feel good about the whole thing. So that's the state. Matt, I'll let you go first. When you think about this group, Kershaw, Sheehan, Miller, Yarbrough, Pepeo, Lynn, Gavin Stone, I'll throw in there. What comes to mind? Like, is it horror? Is it how bad do you feel about this group? Maybe that's the best way to ask this question.
I mean, it's pretty concerning. I think basically what I've come down to is it's a matter of just hoping that things sort of go right. And
yeah,
I'll get a little bit more specific with, honestly, Emmett Sheehan's start is probably the most concerning for me given the state of everything. And I'm talking about his start specifically against the Nationals that we just saw, because like you and I have discussed, and I know we'll get into again here, I'm not so Kershaw's clearly, he's not healthy. Like, 100%. We can get that out on the table now. How injured he is can be debated. The Dodgers have been very non-specific about his shoulder injury since the very beginning, when he went on the IL right before the All-Star break. So considering that is the case, considering the Dodgers are going to have to probably rely on multiple rookie pitchers, and Emmett Sheehan was coming off an encouraging outing against the Braves, to then sort of struggle a little bit, like you alluded to, against the Nationals, is worried me a little bit, because I think if you're the Dodgers, you probably want to start seeing some consistency out of him, so you know whether or not you can trust him in a big playoff game, because at this rate, it can't be, he's good 1 start, maybe 2 starts in a row, but then you don't necessarily know what you're going to get. And so that kind of concerned me the most, already having the knowledge of Kershaw's situation being just not great.
And I'm glad that you brought that up, because one of the things that I was trying to emphasize was that when I talk about Kershaw, it was mostly in response to people that were just writing in permanent marker Emmett Sheehan's name ahead of Clayton Kershaw's name in a postseason rotation, simply because they were focused so much on what they didn't like about Clayton Kershaw that it was almost like we were ignoring all of the flaws. And my point was, hey, Emmett Sheehan has been inconsistent. It hasn't been awesome at all times. And so I'm not ready to just pencil him in. And then he comes out and struggles a little bit. And so that's kind of what I'm getting at. It's not so much me saying, hey, Kershaw is awesome, I have no worries about him, because that's absolutely not true. from my perspective. It's just more of a pushback against everybody's clearly better than Clayton Kershaw, and mostly a pushback to Blake's point that he's going to make here momentarily, that Clayton Kershaw equals Lance Lynn, which we'll get to. But first, that's a tease, because first Laura's got a super chat here, and I think it's worth getting. Bobby Miller is one of the guys that I think there's reason for optimism about. Laura asks, why do they keep bringing up his emotions? What's the backstory? This was a big talking point in his post-game interview. It seemed like he brought it up, but maybe I didn't hear the question that was asked to it. Matt, I'll start with you and Blake. Both you guys have been in the locker room with Bobby Miller after his starts. Not this one in particular, obviously, because it was on the road. But is this something that you feel like is a media-driven thing? Is it something that he constantly brings up in conversation? How would you answer this question?
Go ahead, Blake. You go.
It's just been something he's dealt with kind of throughout his whole career. He's just kind of an electric, fiery kind of person. And sometimes when you're a pitcher, you can kind of let those emotions get to you. Like you start overthrowing when you get too hyped up and you just don't make the pitches that you need to make. As a pitcher, you really need to be in control of how you are and composed on the mound. That's kind of like what we saw with Walker Buehler when he was at his best in the postseason. Like the moment was never too big for him. He never let his emotions overcome him, and he was making the pitches he needed to. Whereas some other pitchers you've seen, they kind of like let their emotions get out of hand and they overthrow, they make poor pitches, and the moment just seems to get to them. So I think that's something Miller's still trying to work on. It's more of a challenge for some people than others.
Yeah, I think the quote he had, he said, quote, just managing my emotions is something I've been working on all year. I feel like I've been getting better at it. I was executing a lot throughout the game. There was a lot of good, but I think the bad outweighed the good. Matt, anything you would add to what Blake said there?
No, I will say I've seen some comments saying it is something created by the media. That's not the case. I can tell you that Bobby Miller himself has openly admitted to, like Blake said, getting too frustrated and letting that impact how he's pitching. Dave Roberts has brought it up. So it's not the media looking to stir the pot by any means. And it's not necessarily a criticism of Bobby Miller. He's a young pitcher. He's a hyper competitive guy, which frankly, a lot, you don't get to the major leagues without having that drive in you. And so it's just a matter of learning how to sort of control that. And like Blake said, Walker Buehler kind of had a similar thing early on. And I think he quickly learned, like, you need to get that under control. And Bobby Miller has said, even like the good emotions, like in terms of adrenaline, like you have to harness that also, because you can have this surge of energy and then maybe you pitch well, but then you tire out. You're not able to get deeper into games. And so the talk of emotions, it's not a criticism of Bobby Miller at all. It's just, a young pitcher, competitive pitcher who is still sort of developing in multiple regards.
Yeah, and I see people comparing it to what we see from Julio Urias when he had been on the mound. And the thing I would say about Julio is that emotion, the demonstrative stuff on the mound, it seemed to come later in his career, once he had already established himself as a guy who was really, really successful and really, really good. So I think there was way less of a conversation, A, because he wasn't bringing it up, and B, because it didn't really need to be a talking point because the success was there on the field. Obviously, if you've watched our shows this past year prior to, of course, his arrest, we talked a lot about that. Like when he's not pitching as well and you're still seeing it, it feels like it does become something that's worth considering and saying, hey, is this getting a little bit too much? Is this taking him off of his game? And so, Laura, I think it's a fair question, but the sense I've gotten as a guy just from the outside that reads the quotes is that it feels like it's something he is constantly thinking about, which is probably because the Dodgers are constantly talking to him about it. So good question. Again, we appreciate the super chat, Laura, as always. Let's start with the positive as we get to this rotation. I think there's two guys that we can be. Well, I have nothing negative to say about Ryan Pepeo. Let me start there, Blake. Ever since he has come back, which is now, is it 4 or 5 appearances since he's been back? The guy's been fantastic. This is a former top 100 prospect who we know had the velocity. We know he had a secondary pitch. And while he's battled not being able to throw strikes last year and then injuries this year, he comes in and throws an absolute gem, literally 7 outs away from a perfect game. Pepeo was. I don't have there aren't a lot of holes that I can poke in Pepeo when it comes to putting together a playoff rotation. I'm not ready to say, hey, Ryan Pepeo, game 1 starter. I'm not ready to say he's not the game 1 starter either, based on everything else going on. So before we get into kind of the poking holes in people, give me your stock report on Ryan Pepeo.
Yeah, so with Pepeo, it feels like he's taken the step forward that we were kind of hoping to see from him. Like we all know he was a top 100 prospect with a lot of upside. In his first year, he was solid, but he was inconsistent. He walked a lot of guys. He didn't have his changeup there yet, and the results were okay overall. It just wasn't what we expected from him. But this year, he found his changeup. He kind of mixed up his pitch mix a little, where he's using his slider more to righties and his changeup more to lefties. And he's talked about that being huge for him. And he's just throwing a lot of strikes. He's cut down his walks a tremendous amount. I'm not sure the exact amount, but he's not really walking anyone, and that's just been the biggest thing for him. And I know, kind of going back to the emotions here, like as a rookie, you're battling those. Like there's so much pressure on being a rookie. So now that he's kind of settled in and he's controlling his emotions better, which is what we're hoping to see from Miller, like tying that all in here, like it's helping him and he's finding a lot of success. So he looks like he's went from being a questionable part of their future to being kind of locked into their future next year and possibly even this year.
What's interesting is, and I'm going to talk some of the underlying metrics. Even in this perfect game, he had a 22% whiff rate, which, how would you describe that? That's like average, Blake, would you say?
Average to below average-ish, probably, yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting because he has just 3 strikeouts, but a low and an average to below average whiff rate, and yet only 4 hard hit balls. And so, again, he's had a higher whiff rate in some of his other outings, so I'm not poo-pooing it. Blake, would you have him or Bobby Miller as the top of your rotation right now?
As of right now, I think it's Pepeo. He's been more consistent.
Yeah,
the stuff isn't as good as Miller's, but you got to have the consistency, and he has more experience. So if you're putting him out there like in a game 1 kind of thing or a game 2 even, like I'm gonna trust the guy with some more experience and who's been more consistent.
Matt, would you agree with that? Is Pepeo over Bobby Miller?
Not yet. For me, at this point, I'll take the gamble on Bobby Miller's velocity and some of his stuff. But again, like the last time we discussed this on our show, I did say, if Pepeo sort of continues on this trajectory, and I'm not saying it needs to be no hitter, perfect game type thing, but he's pitched very well in every game with the Dodgers. If he continues trending that way, then I would feel more comfortable saying, okay, like he can be the game 1 starter rather than potential Bobby Miller. And I will say real quick, there's a good comment from BC. He said Pepeo went onto the IL as a boy, but came back as a man. Yeah. That's pretty funny. I will say, to Pepeo's credit, he was pitching well in spring training already, and which is what I think is most encouraging, because then I did see somebody else saying they want more of a sample size from Pepeo. I think it is only spring training, but we did see kind of the initial growth from last year already. Yeah. And so what we've seen now since he's come off the IL is basically, in my opinion, an extension of that and even better. So, I don't think I do agree, let's see a little bit more before they decide on a game 1 starter. But hey, as we know, as we've mentioned, the Dodgers can sort that out over the next month because everything is pretty much wrapped up.
Let's talk Bobby Miller then. I mentioned the stat line. You could kind of spin it however you would like to. 7 innings, 6 hits, 5 earned, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts. He had a 31% whiff rate, which is good. He had 4 hard hit balls against him in 7 innings, which is very, very good. And again, you could frame this as that 7th inning is when he gave up the 4th and 5th runs. It's also, I believe they said, the first time that he was allowed to face a lineup for the 4th time. So we're not talking Blake Snell territory where you're not allowed to see it a 3rd time. Bobby got to see it a 4th time. Blake, when you look at his game log, if you go back 4 starts, you're going to see 4 earned runs, a gem, and then 5 earned runs. Based on the way you talk, I gather that you would say there is some degree of that being a little bit misleading as far as Bobby Miller, that maybe he has pitched better than those numbers suggest. Is that a fair assessment of where you're at with Bobby Miller?
I think so. It feels like with Bobby Miller, he's like great for most of the game, and then he'll just make 1 or 2 mistakes every game that seems to come back and bite him. Yeah. So it's hard to say with him just because he keeps flashing the great stuff, and then just like a rookie mistake or whatever every single game that hurts him. Like you said, his last inning, he allowed the homer there that gave up 2 runs. It turned a really good start into an okay start. Yeah. And like, I don't think there's been any starts where like they'll score 1 run off him and then another in another inning and then another in the next inning and just kind of keep building. It's always just 1 mistake he makes. So I have some confidence he can get that figured out, especially moving forward. But whether that happens this year or not remains to be seen. which is why I still have some questions.
Well, and I'm glad you said that, because I think you just put into words, maybe in a way that you're going to regret, kind of why I still am higher on Kershaw than I think, relative to the rest of this group, than I think most people are. It's because despite the diminished fastball velocity, I feel like Kershaw has still been able to avoid the big mistake. He still avoids grooving a fastball or hanging a breaking ball to a large degree. And I think that's like the best way that I could phrase. Again, please don't misquote me. I am not saying that Clayton Kershaw is a Cy Young caliber pitcher. I'm just saying, in the context of being compared to Lance Lynn and Emmett Sheehan, those two in particular, because I'm really pleased with Ryan Pepeo, and I think Bobby Miller deserves a ton of credit. But maybe I would say Kershaw is closer to Bobby Miller in my mind as far as guys that I trust than Lance Lynn and Emmett Sheehan, just because he doesn't make that mistake. Lance Lynn is the king of making that mistake. Lance Lynn is the Bobby Miller on steroids, which is good for some time. And I mean, it's been very little time of late. But Blake, I think as you and I have gone back and forth on Kershaw, I think that's the piece that I would push back against and say, that's, if I could put my finger on why I still don't hate the idea of Kershaw, even if the stuff, and when we say stuff, we're really only talking about velocity, is diminished. It's because I just trust him to not make the big mistake.
My pushback to that would be, he's been getting incredibly lucky in his starts, and I don't think it's sustainable where he's going to be able to keep preventing the runs from scoring and those big mistakes. Like, as you kind of hinted at, I said in the last 30 days, Clayton Kershaw and Lance Lynn have been the same pitcher, and the advanced stats back that up. Everything outside of the ERA backs that up. They both have a negative 0.2 WAR. They both have low strikeout to walk ratios. They are both allowing more than 2 homers per 9 innings. They both have hard hit rates that are way too high. They both have FIPs that are right around the same area. Like, they just haven't been good, both of them. And I know Kershaw's been lucky because he has a 170 batting average on balls in play allowed. And that's something that's going to regress, especially with his 42% hard hit rate. So when he starts giving up like around a 300 average, which is normal, as opposed to a 195 average, runs are going to start scoring. He's also stranded 100% of runners on base, and that's very unsustainable. Most pitchers are at the 70 to 80% mark. So when that starts to normalize, his ERA is going to go up. And that's my biggest concern with Kershaw. It's not like what he's been doing in these starts. It's that all the numbers are pointing to massive regression, and we know he's hurt. It's not like I'm just saying he's washed or anything or has no talent left. There's a clear injury that's affecting him. The stuff isn't good, and the results are kind of going to show that soon, I believe.
And I see the super chat. Will Smith is on our agenda. It's the next topic once we finish talking about starting pitching. So Michael, hang tight on that one really quick. So Blake, I mean, are you saying what you are dancing around saying, which is that you trust Clayton Kershaw as much as you trust Lance Lynn right now? Because it sounds like you're saying, hey, all these metrics that I put my faith in, all say these two guys are the same pitcher. And you could make a case that Kershaw's last 2 starts have probably been worse. So would you trust Lance Lynn more than Clayton Kershaw right now?
I still don't think I would trust Lynn more than Kershaw, but the way Kershaw is at this stage with his injury and his diminished stuff, I think it's very close. I mean, if Lance Lynn got back to the form we saw when he first got traded to the Dodgers, I think it would be easy to say Lynn over Kershaw, but I don't really trust either of them at this point.
And when you say diminished stuff, like, our fastball velocity? Yes. Is there other diminished stuff that we're talking about here?
It's kind of a whole combination of stuff, because when your fastball isn't as effective, it's going to make your slider less effective. They're like going to be the same velocity. So instead of having the 86 slider and the 91 fastball, that kind of offset a little more. Like 88's a lot closer to 86. So even if the break is still there on the slider, you don't have that same differential between the velocities. And then it's just affecting him. His expected stats are all incredibly high. Like his expected batting average, his expected slugging, his expected weighted on base average, they're just all shooting up crazy high. And it's just concerning to me, because I believe those are the stats that are going to show his future better than his ERA is. So I don't really have trust in either of them right now.
It is interesting looking at Kershaw's last outing. He had a 22% whiff rate. So, I mean, aside from getting basically no swing and miss on his fastball, everything else was pretty much around his season average as far as performance. So that's kind of like, I think sometimes stuff can be synonymous with velocity. And so it's like, well, Sheehan has better stuff and Sheehan has a better fastball, but Kershaw's slider, which by the way is 2.7 miles an hour below season average. So the gap between the fastball and slider remain the same. They're just both about 3 miles an hour slower. That's kind of one of the pushbacks that I would have is Kershaw's velocity is diminished. And again, I want to emphasize, like, to me, I would put Kershaw in is he second or third in the Dodgers rotation right now? Because to me, the conversation is more Emmett Sheehan versus Clayton Kershaw. I've got Kershaw ahead of Sheehan. Blake, do you have Kershaw ahead of Sheehan?
I wouldn't. I would trust Sheehan more. I know, like you were talking about the ERA, and he still has some mistakes, but I'm still just betting on the stuff in the postseason. I think that's what plays up. Like, it's not the perfect comp, but we saw with Hyunjin Ryu, like he would have great regular seasons, and then he would get hit around a lot in the postseason because he didn't have that same level of stuff that other pitchers do. And it's like we see Joe Kelly play up in the postseason because that's what plays. It gives you more room to make mistakes, and it just helps out overall.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like even looking at their whiff rates were the exact same last time out. Emmett Sheehan gave up more hard hit balls in less at bats last time out than Clayton Kershaw did. And it was the worst version of Kershaw that we've basically ever seen. And again, I hear you, like his fastball is faster. I don't think Emmett Sheehan has a secondary pitch that is even close to slider. And Matt, like I'm going to put this on a tee for you. Blake is just talking about analytics and he doesn't want to talk about experience. He doesn't want to talk about like any of that stuff, which I feel like should matter here.
Yeah. First, I'll start off with get these nerd stats out of my sport, please. No, in all seriousness, I do understand. I mean, look, we've discussed.
Do you have
this.
Kershaw or Sheehan third?
I have Kershaw third still. And honestly, I don't even know if the Dodgers will, out of respect, will push Kershaw to a game 3. Like, I don't see him starting any later than a game 2, assuming he's. My biggest concern is Kershaw going to be able to pitch in October, honestly? Like, so you guys, like, we could kick the can around. Should it be Kershaw? Should it be Miller, Sheehan, whatever the case is? My bigger question is Kershaw even going to be healthy in a month from now?
Yeah, fair.
If he is still pitching, I do have him ahead of Sheehan still at this point. I don't think Sheehan, I think because of legacy stuff and whether you want to think that should be factored in or not, like it is, like Kershaw, like we were saying on our last show, Kershaw is, a generational talent. For better or worse, there is some slack, some leeway that comes with that. And I think we're going to see that from the Dodgers. Now, if the Dodgers had 4 pitchers outperforming him clearly, then maybe there's a discussion, but there isn't. And I do agree with you that once you get into the playoffs, we don't know what these rookie pitchers are going to do. They might be great, and they certainly have the talent and upside to fare well in October, but it could also go the other way, which we've seen with other heralded rookies that have struggled in their first taste of postseason baseball. And so I think because of all that, Kershaw is still in the rotation. And honestly, I think Sheehan probably does end up being the odd man out. 1, just because I think they'd like him out of the bullpen, and 2, I think there is just a little too much inconsistency from him.
Yeah, and I actually think the irony of debating Kershaw versus Sheehan is it's probably going to be Kershaw and Sheehan pitching in the same postseason game, like Kershaw going and getting you 4 or 5 and hoping that a guy like Sheehan, or maybe it's Michael Grove, can go pick you up 6 more outs after that. But if you look at just kind of the overall makeup of the rotation guys, it seems to me like you would have either Pepeo or Bobby Miller as a potential game 1 starter, with a Ryan Yarbrough maybe as the piggyback to one of those guys. And then maybe it's Kershaw and Emmett Sheehan in game 2, and then Bobby Miller and the rest of the bullpen for game 3. I mean, like, I'm not saying that's what I would do. I'm saying that Pepeo and Bobby Miller would be my 1 and 2 starters, and Kershaw would be my number 3 starter. But Matt, it sounds like you and I are aligned that we don't think Kershaw is going to be the game 3 starter. He's either going to be game 1 or game 2 if he's healthy. Blake, do you, like, if you had to guess, we're not saying what would Blake Williams do if he was in charge, but if you had to predict, do you think Kershaw is game 1, game 2, or game 3?
I think he'd go game 2, but it also wouldn't shock me if they push him back to game 3, just because that would be on the road. And then you wouldn't set up the potential for him pitching twice in a series. He would only go once and then preferably have more rest for the next series. So it wouldn't totally shock me if they go with game 3.
Yeah. We'll see. I mean, it's interesting. And this was the one other question. Somebody asked it in the chat, and I'm glad they did. I think it was Dave asked it. Like, when we talk about Blake, as down as you are on Clayton Kershaw, how bad do you think he is? Like, if we're just talking from an ERA perspective and things play out the way that they are expected to, if Kershaw gives you 5 innings, are you expecting 3 earned runs, 4 earned runs, 5 earned runs?
I think with the current state of him, he's like a 5 ERA guy. That's being positive from what the analytics suggest he is, and also down from what his actual ERA is. So
yeah,
I think with some more innings and a larger sample, we're going to see regression out of his ERA. But I'm not totally willing to buy in on that like 7 FIP or 6.5 or whatever it is.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, that's 5 innings, 3 earned runs, which if you told all 3 of us, hey, Kershaw's going to pitch in the playoffs and he's going to give you 5 innings and 3 earned, like, I wouldn't be mad, Matt. I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, and again, we're having this conversation in a vacuum of the current state of Clayton Kershaw, not what we saw in the first half or, in years past. So I agree. I've been worried about his shoulder since he came back, and Dave Roberts' first comment after the start were, it was a good start. Now I just hope, he comes in okay the next day. And it was like, well, he just spent multiple weeks on the IL. Like, why wouldn't he be okay? Why would he be back if he's not ready to pitch? So 5 innings, 3 runs in the playoffs, you kind of just have to take that at this point.
And Robert, Kershaw, a closer in the postseason, that's not allowed. Get that nonsense out of it. That's one you're going to unite Blake and I right here on the fact that Clayton Kershaw coming out of the bullpen this postseason would be the death of me. I want to throw out a couple more stats real quick because I think these are interesting. A lot of these have to do with the bullpen. I've mentioned this. The Dodgers, because I think when we talk about starting pitching, the way that the Dodgers are going to frame their rotation come the postseason is going to be a bullpen, like a pitching by committee. Basically, they're going to have 13 pitchers, and some of those guys are going to be asked to get 3 or 4 innings, and some of them are going to get asked to give 1 or 2 innings. But there's not going to be the normal, here are our 4 starters, and here are our 9 relievers, and they all have defined roles, I don't think. And so when we talk about pitching, I think we should talk about the bullpen and the rotation as a whole. So real quick on the bullpen, I've mentioned this before. Since July 1st, they have the best ERA in all of Major League Baseball. That's a 2.54. It's worth pointing out that 2.54 ERA is 0.7 better than the second best ERA, bullpen ERA of any team in baseball. They are like dramatically better than every other bullpen in baseball over the past 2+ months. So that's important. Since July 1st, the Dodgers pitching as a whole is 6th in baseball, 3.82 ERA. That's better than Atlanta for what it's worth. And it's within 0.02 of the only other 2 National League playoff teams on this list ahead of them. That would be Milwaukee and Philadelphia. Since August 1st, the Dodgers pitching, starters and bullpen, get this, Blake, best in all of Major League Baseball. Now, I know ERA, old school stat. That's a Matt Moreno stat in Blake's world, but they have the best ERA of any pitching staff, starters and relievers in all of Major League Baseball since August 1st. Obviously, what has changed since August 1st? Urias is gone, which he wasn't very good this season to begin with. I had hoped that he was going to be good, but I don't think that's like a major negative for the rotation, even if you would trust him. Because, hey, if we're ditching experience and pedigree and all that anyways, and just looking at the metrics, they probably didn't like Julio. So get him out of here. Kershaw's health is the biggest negative change if we're going back to August 1st. But I would also add, not nearly weighted as highly as Kershaw's injury, Ryan Pepeo has totally emerged since August 1st. He's included in that, but like dating back to August 1st, we feel way better about Pepeo than we probably did. If you want to go back to September 1st, obviously things start to get a little bit worse in the rankings. The Dodgers are 14th in baseball in ERA. However, it's worth noting the Braves, the mighty Braves, are 23rd in Major League Baseball in ERA. So basically the Dodgers have had a better ERA as a team than the Braves since July 1st, since August 1st, and from September 1st. No matter what split you take, the Dodgers have a better pitching performance than the Braves. Again, factoring in how much the bullpen is needed to pitch and how good they have been. So I say all that, just throwing it out there. Let this fish food, let the fish feed on it however they might. But I think those numbers are interesting. Blake, I'll give you a chance if you have any thoughts or response to any of the things that I just said. And then we can move on to Will Smith after that. But any thoughts on that?
I believe Max Fried was hurt for quite a while, which is kind of affecting the Braves stuff. And I think still with them, like if you're going up against a rotation of Fried, Spencer Strider and Bryce Elder, or whoever their number 3
Charlie
is.
Morton. Come on, Matt's boy, Charlie Morton. Don't disrespect him.
I think he might be their number 4, but still, that's another name there. Versus like Kershaw at his current state, Bobby Miller, Ryan Pepeo, and Emmett Sheehan or Lance Lynn. Like, I think it's pretty obvious everyone's going to take the
Lance
Braves.
Lynn is getting nowhere near a postseason mound. He doesn't count.
I mean, Dave Roberts said they still trust him, so that's the only info we have on that. So I don't think he's going to be in the rotation, but if you want to believe Roberts, he might be. But like, I think it's pretty obvious we're all going to take that Braves rotation there still. The Dodgers might have the edge in the bullpen, but I don't think the rotations are that close at all.
I agree with you. And the point I'm trying to make is that when you include the starting rotation and bullpen all together, I think it shrinks the gap between those two rotations because of how, like, we could say, hey, the Braves have a good bullpen. The Dodgers have been dramatically better than everyone in Major League Baseball for 2.5 months now. And that it's not just like first and second. If you're 0.7, I mean, the gap between second and like 10th is like 0.1. So the like 0.7 is a massive gap that the Dodgers have over the past 2.5 months. And so I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. It's not that I would take the Dodgers rotation over the Braves or that there's not a massive gap between those two, because looking at Fried, Strider, Elder, and Morton in whatever order you put them in doesn't make me feel awesome about Pepeo, Miller, Kershaw, and Emmett Sheehan. All right. For what it's worth. However, I just, we can get so negative about starting pitching that I think we can fail to step back and look at the totality of the Dodgers 13-man pitching staff, Matt, and appreciate that when you factor in the bullpen, which gets ignored and overlooked, A, because they were bad at the beginning of the year, and B, because they're an afterthought and they only pitch for 2 or 3 innings most of the time, that we fail to recognize that when those guys are coming in and giving up 1 run every 3 or 4 days, that makes a big difference when you look back at the whole big picture.
Yeah, I think some of the stuff, I know you hit on a lot of the different factors with the bullpen and pitching stats sort of improving of late. Still, to me, I think the biggest thing to me is their improvement, at least initially, did sort of correlate with starting pitching, stabilizing a little bit. And I don't know if we can necessarily count on that. And even going into the playoffs, like, yes, Bobby Miller is just pitching in to the 7th inning in his career now. But in the playoffs, is he going to give you more than 6? Probably not. Is he it might even be reasonable that he only goes 5 just because everything changes his first time. And so my concern would be is if the starting pitching ends up turning in, shorter outings again, what impact is that going to have on the bullpen in, a 5-game series or a 7-game series? But look, like I said before, can the Dodgers put it all together? Yes. Would I bet on that? Not necessarily, because I have seen just a little too much inconsistency from them throughout the year.
Yeah.
And again, we're talking about, Clayton Kershaw, all the different factors now sort of going into it. But hey, I will say I'm fully on board with Andrew Friedman say they're coming with big boy stuff.
Big boy stuff, baby.
Sign me up for whatever that means.
Yeah, and it is worth pointing out that the bullpen numbers go back to July 1st that I'm talking about. So that was about a month before they really had innings eater Lance Lynn in there to stabilize some things. All right, let's get to some Will Smith conversation, and then we'll get to some odds and ends. Will Smith struggles continue. This is my guy, so everything I'm about to say is going to hurt me. All right, I need you all to know that I say this with a humble and sad heart. Will Smith has a 219 batting average, a 342 on base percentage, and a 250 slugging percentage in September thus far. That's a 592 OPS, which for the Matt Morenos out there is not a very good number. Okay. His slugging today is at a season low of 444 after an 0 for 5 today. Why I am concerned is if you look at Will Smith's numbers, he has been very bad at the end of every single season in his career so far. In 2000, so I mentioned right now he's got a 592 OPS in September. In September and October of 2021, he had a 728 OPS, not very good. In October of 2022 is a 761 OPS, which I would say is league average, basically. It's the only month that he is below 800 for a career OPS of any month in his entire career. So if you add up his career numbers in every other month, they are very good. And then September and October, it is below average every single year. And it's way under. It's 760 for his career. Postseason, he's been not very good in the postseason as well. 2020, he was 14 for 69 with 24 strikeouts. 2021, he was actually good in the postseason, 11 for 44, 3 home runs, only 8 strikeouts. I say good. He was average to slightly above average. 2022, a very short one, 3 for 16 with 2 strikeouts. That's all super concerning to me, that this is not an abnormal blip on the radar for Will Smith. This is his September and October and postseason all in a bag has been bad basically every year of his career, Matt. And so, like, it's not like, oh, he's a rookie, he's burning out, or he's playing too much catcher, because I don't think that's the case. He's like 14th in innings in caught or something like that. Like, he's not, that might be low. He's probably top 10, but he's in like the 7 to 10 range. Like, he's not catching way more games than everybody else. His rhythm hasn't been thrown way off. There's not really any excuse here other than that maybe this is just I don't know. I don't know what to make of it, because it doesn't seem like he's out of shape or something. Like, I don't know why he just runs out of steam in September and October. But Matt, it's concerning.
Yeah, it's definitely, like you said, I think the fact that it's become a trend across multiple seasons is the biggest worry with it. This year specifically, potentially it's maybe I'd have to go back and look at when the concussion happened. It's kind of his stats after that. And I don't know. I'm not saying he's obviously playing through a concussion, but maybe that time off just affected him and he hasn't been able to find a rhythm for whatever reason. And it's been brought up multiple times over the past few weeks. I mean, months now at this point. And each time it is, Dave Roberts and Will Smith both say it's not fatigue. I wouldn't necessarily expect Will Smith to come out and say, yeah, I'm tired, just because like no player is going to do that.
George Kirby is, by the way, the pitcher for the Mariners the other night, who said, I can't believe they made me throw. He's like Dave Roberts' dream starting pitcher. But anyways, that's a side note. Keep going.
That's true. So there's one player who would do that. I think Dave Roberts, though, would allude to if he thought it was fatigue. And even though that has been downplayed publicly, I feel like Will Smith has gotten a lot of DH starts recently.
Yeah,
and
3 of his last 7 appearances have been DH.
Which I think is a bit strange. I know, and it's not because JD Martinez has been out of the lineup, because he's been on the IL for weeks, and Will Smith getting the DH starts has only been a recent trend. So part of me feels like, do they think maybe fatigue is some sort of factor with this? Yeah, I mean, it's been a struggle for him, and it's kind of crazy to think, like, if he struggled at this point with the few starts that Austin Barnes had made, like, what if Will Smith was starting more earlier in the first half? Like, it might be even more of a difficulty for him now.
Blake, we've got someone in the chat asking you if you remember me saying that I want 0 Austin Barnes starts in the postseason. And for you and that person, before you answer, I want you to know that my stance on that has not changed. I want 0. That 572, like 592, Austin Barnes would kill for that OPS. I mean, that is like he lies awake at night dreaming of having a 592 OPS for his career. Michael, again, thank you for the super chat. We're not going to talk about Smith being poop emoji. Blake, what do you make of Will Smith? And maybe are you ready to give Austin Barnes everyday starts in the postseason?
I mean, Austin Barnes has been their best hitting catcher in quite a while recently. So, but
quite a while,
or recently, like in the last month or so. I mean, but like, it is concerning that Smith has been pretty bad. I'm not really sure what's behind it. Like, his concussions were pretty early, like in April, weren't they? And then he still went on to make the All-Star team. So I don't think it's the concussions as much. It's just weird. Like, he goes from being a superstar hitter to below average every year, and maybe he is tiring out. I don't know. I really have no clue. And maybe the Dodgers don't even know. And that's why Roberts is just trying to have him DH to give him some extra rest and see if they can figure it out. But yeah, I mean, it's strange.
For what it's worth, coming into today's game, Austin Barnes' OPS in the month of September and October was 348, 250 points below Will Smith. So now, what did he go 2 for 4 today?
What's his batting average this month, just for Matt?
It was 091 prior to this. So, I mean, I tried to be nice to the guy. That 3-something on the OPS felt nicer than 091. Now, again, that was like an 11 at bats. So I just want to, we're talking September and October. We could just cool the Jets a little bit on the Austin Barnes a love. He had a decent August. I'll give the guy that. All right. The 11 hits he had in the month of August were basically as many as he had in April, May, June, and July all combined. I think it was 13 in the first 4 months of the season and 11 in the month of August. So Blake, I don't know if you answered the question. Is Austin Barnes, if Blake Williams is the manager, is Austin Barnes starting playoff games?
I'm still going with Will Smith and betting on the talent. Maybe he probably should be dropped down in the lineup and shouldn't be hitting third anymore. Maybe get him like 6th and see if that sparks him. But it kind of also just feels like the thing with the rotation. Like, it's just throw what you have out there and see what sticks. Like, you're not confident about either of them, but I'm still just going to bet on the talent of Will Smith.
Matt, since you don't believe in OPS and you only believe in the eye test, how many games would you say is Austin Barnes starting every game of the NLDS for you? Is he starting all but one of them? How many would you have?
No, he's starting one game in the NLDS, and if they advance to the NLCS, he'll start 2 of those.
You want that to happen? Are you predicting or asking for?
I'm predicting. I also just think, again, like when we were discussing this topic earlier in the season, like there are other issues, like bigger issues than whether or not Austin Barnes or Will Smith is catching. I will say Austin Barnes did single-handedly win about 3 or 4 games for the Dodgers last month. So, you
3 or 4. We're going with 3 or 4. He made 2 nice plays.
Definitely.
Matt. He hit a home run, and then he had the tag.
He had there was 2 big games against the Brewers that he made significant contributions in, and then the doubleheader, which was that September at that point, the doubleheader against the Marlins, his squeeze bunt.
Yeah.
Hey, that's 3.
The one thing I would say is you're like, hey, they have bigger problems, so who cares? I would say they have bigger problems, which is why it will matter. You might feel like a small drop off in somebody's crazy mind between Will Smith and Austin Barnes, even this diminished version of Will Smith. And we just talked about how broken we think the starting rotation is. The Dodgers need to maximize every single advantage offensively they can. And even 3 at-bats from Austin Barnes is 3 too many when the margins are that thin.
I could also counter that by saying the Dodgers need to maximize their pitching as best they can. And who calls a better game is, I think, still up for some debate in the club. It's not a clear decision in the clubhouse. And that's Will Smith has improved in that area. But I think if you ask around, there is still at least a perception that Austin Barnes will call a little bit of a better game, maybe be a little bit more prepared from a scouting standpoint than Will Smith at this point in his career.
He's also arguably the worst defensive catcher in all of baseball. So for what it's worth, I mean, and I hear you. I'm willing to say, even if Barnes is 20% better there, I still think the gap defensively more than makes up for that before we've even gotten to the offensive stuff. So, okay, let's get to some odds and ends and then some questions. I know we're over the hour mark here. First one, Freddie Freeman, 53rd double on Friday night. He breaks the franchise record. I love this note. It was also his 19th 3-hit game of the season, which seems like an outrageous number. That double record, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, stood since 1929. So that seems pretty significant. Dave Roberts said he was going to do the Freddie when Freddie Freeman broke it. Have we gotten that yet? I don't know if I missed it.
No, he hasn't done it. He's waiting for Freddie Freeman to either, I think, break the MLB record, which is like 61 or 62.
That's a freaking cop out.
64. So, but he said at the time, people did run with, he's going to do it when he does the Dodgers record. But Dave said at that time, no, like it needs to be something higher. So maybe the NL record will be enough to get him to do it. But for now, it does seem like it needs to be the MLB record. Weak sauce.
The other odds and ends bit of news here is Chris Taylor, the Roberto Clemente Award nominee. Justin Turner was the team's nominee. It felt like for the past however many years he was in LA. He won the award last year as well. So Matt, give us a little background on Chris Taylor and kind of his connection to the community and some of the stuff that he does. Because again, I think Justin Turner has sort of been the face of the community efforts of the Dodgers for a long time.
Yeah, so Chris and Mary Taylor, they're both very active in this LA community and giving back. They work with a Boys and Girls Club in the area. They've joined the Dodgers Foundation on different events. Their own foundation, the CT3 Foundation, held a golf charity earlier this year as their first sort of in-person event in Southern California. They're also doing stuff in Virginia, Chris Taylor's hometown. And so basically the Roberto Clemente Award, looks at what players do off the field and giving back and stuff like that. And like you said, Justin Turner, each team has, sort of one nominee, and then it's up for one MLB winner league wide. Justin Turner won last year, as you said. Clayton Kershaw won, I believe, in 2011 or 2012, and Steve Garvey won it way back when. So those are the only 3 league wide winners the Dodgers have ever had. So history isn't necessarily on Chris Taylor's side, but hey, even if he doesn't win the Roberto Clemente Award, him and his wife certainly deserve recognition for what they're doing and giving back.
Love it. 2012, Clayton Kershaw, Roberto Clemente Award winner. So there you go. But good stuff from Chris Taylor. Love to see, these guys have influence and they have a platform. And when guys take up some of their free time to make use of that and put it towards the good of the community, it's awesome stuff. So shout out to Chris Taylor for that. Let's get to some questions here before we go. We'll take a few all caps questions in the chat. And then I've got a good food one to end us out. This was I can't remember if it was Matt or Blake that sent us this meme, but it's going to be a good food question. So let's get to some questions. Here we go. Nomo Splitter, Blake, one for you. Who has promising underlying metrics on the Dodgers at the moment? Anybody?
Some of the guys on offense like Mookie and Freddie Freeman.
Okay.
Going out on a ledge there.
Yeah, exactly. Bobby Miller had a 31% whiff rate. So like when you're looking at just basic stuff like that, hey, Lance Lynn had a 28% whiff rate, Blake. So forget the strikeout numbers. Swing and miss Lance Lynn, your guy.
Yeah, I'll throw in Evan Phillips and just kind of forget that you said Lance Lynn there. The guys who are performing well right now are pretty much the ones who also have the good metrics. So there you go.
Here we go, Blake. This one is just on a platter for you. Your thoughts on Mike Trout? I believe the report was that the Angels, if Mike Trout were to request a trade, the Angels would be open to getting rid of him. What's the report?
Yeah.
Since you're our Angels representative on the Zoom tonight, what do you got for us?
Mike Trout is definitely one of the best baseball players of all time, but he's never going to be a Dodger because Matthew Moreno won't trade him here no matter what. He probably wouldn't even trade any of their players here no matter what. And if Mike Trout gets traded, it's probably going to be to like the Phillies or something where he's wanted to play his whole career.
Maybe he can get traded to the Padres. Not that I want that, but then Juan Soto, they would have to move Juan Soto, and then Juan Soto can make his way to Dodger Stadium. That would be a nice one. Matt, you agree? No chance the Angels ever trade Trout to the Dodgers?
Yeah, I don't. The Dodgers could honestly blow them away with a ridiculous offer that maybe they shouldn't do, and I think the Angels would still say no.
Okay. Ederico wants to know batting lineup come postseason time. We've talked about this. It's such a hard one because the Dodgers are going to be so platoon heavy. But maybe I'll kind of, Ederico, apologies if this is not what you were after, but the top of the lineup. You mentioned, Matt, maybe moving Will Smith down in the order. How would you shake up? What's that?
That was Blake's idea.
Sorry, Blake's idea. Excuse me. Blake, give me the first five. Like where would you move before we get to some of the platoon-ish guys? When it comes to Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, JD Martinez, Max Muncy, Will Smith, those guys are pretty much the five everyday players. And then you get into the Haywards, Peraltas, Kikes, Ahmed Rosarios, etc. Am I missing somebody there of the five everyday guys? I can't remember, but how would you order those players?
It's going to be Mookie and Freeman at the top two. I think we all know that's kind of locked in there. 3 is where it kind of gets tricky. I'd guess they probably go with JD Martinez there and then Max Muncy 4 if they were to drop Will Smith, where you could put him 5. So that's probably what I'd go. I still don't love Martinez in the 3 hole just because he's kind of a all slug, no get on base kind of player. So maybe they'd throw David Peralta in there. They've kind of been doing that more recently against a righty. But it also, I know Dave Roberts loves to do the lefty-righty thing down the lineup. So if you go with Martinez 3, Muncy 4, and Smith 5, that's righty-lefty from the top there. So that's probably what's going to end up happening if they do drop Smith down, and that's probably what I would do.
Yeah. It's interesting because that's been the critique of Max Muncy, right? Is that he comes up in big spots where it's just put the ball in play and they score a run. And he's pretty much the same as JD Martinez to a far greater extent, where it's low batting average, high slugging percentage, which is not in a vacuum a bad thing. But when Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman are standing on base in front of you, it could potentially be one. Nat, would you stick with the lineup then? You didn't seem happy when I accused you of.
No, it wasn't that. I just wanted Blake to get credit for his idea. That's all. I don't see them changing the lineup. If they did make that change with with the top 5 everyday players, I agree with Blake's order because I do think they value the right, left.
Craig found the guy I was forgetting about, James Outman, who's the 6th everyday guy. But you would have him 6th, I imagine, Blake.
Yeah, probably. He'd probably even be 7th, and they'd go like Hayward 6th or something, because that's just what they've been doing throughout the year. I think they would have moved him up if they had more plans to move him up already. So
Yeah. There's a question here about Peralta struggling. TQT. Peralta is below average on OPS and weighted runs created plus. He's not getting everyday at bats. He's still sort of being platooned. But Matt, any concern about Peralta and the struggles that he's been going through?
I mean, yeah, but what other option do they sort of have, right? Like, this is the roster that they've constructed. He's part of their platoon lineup. And so, maybe it changes in the postseason. Maybe they decide, Chris Taylor is hitting well enough. We're just going to play him against a right-hander and take our chances with that. But other than that, I mean, Peralta and Hayward are part of the platoon. There isn't necessarily another option in the minors, even if you technically replace him with Johnny DeLuca. Like, it's not a lefty bat. There's another right-handed hitter. Michael Busch, I think that ship has sailed. We saw, he was tearing the cover off the ball and came up and sort of struggled again with the Dodgers still. So it kind of is what it is at this point.
Yeah, it seems like, I mean, you look at the monthly splits, August was not very good. September has ticked up a little bit. Like, it's, a very small sample size, but the OPS has gone from 6 something to almost 800 in the month of September, October. But again, it just feels like that's a veteran guy that they're just going to trust to, when the moment gets big, that the pulse isn't going to get too fast for him. Blake, any thoughts from you on Peralta?
I feel the same way as Matt. Like, I don't think he should be playing as much as he is. They're playing every day, but it's what they have. It's what they built. They put themselves into this hole. I've kind of been vocal about it all year that I don't think the team is very good because they have all these flaws. Like, we just spent all this time talking about the rotation being bad and then their catchers being bad. And now we're talking about their outfielders being bad.
They didn't need to address the catcher position. We can take a deep breath on that front, Blake.
Yeah, but I just mean, like, it's just been a trend. Like, they've kind of tanked this year, and this is what we're getting. This is the results we see.
This year. They are literally on pace for 99 plus wins.
This is the first I'm hearing of Blake being skeptical of the Dodgers. I thought he was predicting 110 wins.
Yeah. It's amazing. I've never heard somebody that is so negative about a team that is going to win 99 games.
Because I'm thinking about them in terms of the postseason. Like, the regular season for the Dodgers is what it is. Every year we know they're going to be competitive, but I think there's a difference between building a roster that's going to be really good in the regular season and one that's kind of built for the postseason. Like last year with the Phillies, we saw they were built for the postseason. They had good pitchers at the top of the rotation, and they had a lineup that just slugs and is going to hit. And the Dodgers just have a lot of holes this year. I don't think they're ready. Like, their whole rotation's a mess. They have a lot of questions in their lineup. Even when things are good with their lineup, like, they're still relying on 2 hitters to carry it.
I mean, the irony is, like, I actually think history, like, having starting pitching depth is almost a really overrated thing in the postseason. Like, some of the greatest starting rotations that have ever been assembled get into the postseason, and it doesn't even matter. So I don't know. They are going to slug. They do have an elite bullpen. Like, I think they've put together many of these pieces. Again, they have the 3rd best record in baseball, and it's not a fluke. A month ago, Blake went from they should be sellers at the deadline to he had bought back in, and now he's back to they should have been sellers at the deadline.
I never totally bought back in. I said I wouldn't be surprised if they won the World Series. That's a huge difference. Like last year,
did Blake buy back in? Folks that have been with us, I felt like there was some buyback in. I know Gritty Scott.
I think
there was some buy-in.
I think for Blake standards, there was some buying back in, but it was on par with a lot of what I said. Was at this point, like, if they were to win a World Series, I wouldn't be completely shocked. Whereas before August, I would have been floored if you told me the Dodgers could potentially win the World Series.
And I know the playoffs are completely random too. I'm just saying, like, it would very much shock me if this team, as it's constructed, wins. It's just what it is.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm looking at the Phillies of last year, and I would take the 2023 Dodgers over the 2022 Phillies.
Like the current state of the Dodgers, or maybe what
they
Phillies
were such a fluke last year. Like, the Phillies were the product of it's totally random.
I think
that team wasn't very good.
For me, like, I get there is some randomness to the playoffs and that it's not always the best team wins, but still, for me, I would rather have the most talented team every year and go into the playoffs with that. Go into the playoffs with a set rotation. We have 4 starters we know are going to give us 6 innings no matter what. We know we have a bullpen with clearly defined roles with a 7th, 8th, 9th guy, lights out. And I understand the potential to put all this together, a quote unquote perfect team isn't likely.
Right.
But I still want the most talented team possible every single time, rather than, hey, it's a crapshoot anyway, so let's see what happens this year with this ragtag group.
And again, nobody is like, hey, the rotation's awesome. We planned for this and it has worked out perfectly. Like, could the Dodgers have done more to address the starting rotation? Yes. Has there been some, like, is this in the like below 50th percentile of positive outcomes for the Dodgers? Like, I was joking. There was no way we were counting on Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin to get through a full season. Did I expect both of them to be done for the year a month and a half ago? Did I expect Julio Urias to be terrible and then to get arrested for a felony? Did I expect Clayton Kershaw to get injured? Like, some of these things in a vacuum, like Kershaw not being healthy, not a surprise. But you're telling me that they miss out on May, Gonsolin, and a healthy Kershaw and the Julio news on top of it. I think those are the types of outcomes that, even if this wasn't ever going to play out in a perfect way, I still think this was on the low end of potential outcomes.
But that's fair. I disagree in the sense that at the time of the trade deadline, they had a pretty good sense of what the situation. They knew Gonsolin's issues were going on, and at that point,
but who was available?
You figure it out. I think there were trades. Like we saw, like
the 2 Mets guys would have been the guys, but they got crushed for. Yeah,
the Verlander, look, that could be a separate discussion. That could be end of season once the dust settles. If the Dodgers go, hey, the '88 team won the World Series, so maybe this one will too. Is my motto. That and Andrew Friedman's big boy plans.
Yeah, all I'm saying is nobody thought the 2022 Phillies, like nobody right before the playoffs started, were like, hey, you know what? Screw the regular season. These guys are built for the postseason. Like, it's total hindsight looking back on them. Blake, you were all bought in. You were buying your World Series.
I wasn't totally bought in, but the preseason last year, or spring training, I was saying the Phillies are a really good team, and I think they have a good shot. Like, I'll find the texts I had about that, and I was high on the Phillies.
Training. We're talking about after they had won, whatever it was, 87 games. You were still saying the same thing.
They were built for the postseason. Like, they had 3 good pitchers at the top of the rotation, and they had a lineup that just slugs. Like, they had Realmuto, Castellanos, Schwarber, Harper, Hoskins. Like, they were just a really solid lineup with good pitching, and that's kind of what you need.
Yeah, we'll agree to disagree on that one. All right, should we do the food question? We're at 118, Matt. I'll defer to you. Should we throw this one up just to end on a positive note, or should we save this for a future show?
We could close with it. I don't think it'll be that long, and
Let's
still have
okay.
people.
So this was I don't know, like something off the internet that was sent to us. Keep 5, cut 5 cheese foods, and the foods are, for those listening on podcast: string cheese, pizza, grilled cheese, cheese and crackers, cheeseburger, cheesecake, cheese fries, mac and cheese, Cheez-Its, and mozzarella sticks. So again, you've got to eliminate 5 of these things from your diet, from your life altogether. And I said that this exercise was actually incredibly easy for me. I love cheese. So shout out to our guy, Scott, who is not participating in this one. He would just say, cut all 10 of them. Cheese and crackers, an easy elimination for me. Number 1, string cheese. I like string cheese, but definitely not an impact on my life if it's gone. Cheez-Its. I think Cheez-Its, Goldfish are the most overrated snacks of all snacks. So that's 3. Number 4, I'm going with cheese fries, because French fries by themselves are elite. I don't need cheese on them. I'm fine if there's cheese on it. I won't complain. But we talked about fast food. Animal style fries, I think, are overrated. I'll just regular fries dipped in the sauce. I'm good with that. And then 5th is the hard one, but I would go mac and cheese. I think mac and cheese, of the options left, pizza, grilled cheese, cheeseburger, mozzarella sticks, cheesecake, I would have mac and cheese last, 6th on that list. So Blake, I'm going to come to you next, because I know Moreno's already pissed at me about one of the things I just said. But give me yours, or you can react to my list, whatever you want to do here, Blake.
Yeah, I think you're right on 3. The 3 easy ones for me are cheese and crackers, string cheese, and Cheez-Its. Like, you can get rid of those. I won't really miss them. Then that's where it kind of gets hard for me. I think I'd get rid of grilled cheese and mozzarella sticks.
Okay.
For me, the last cut is a toss-up between cheese fries and mozzarella sticks, and I like potatoes a lot, so cheese fries are
We're aware.
probably
It's
my favorite thing.
three of your 10 favorite vegetables are all potatoes, so we know of your love for potatoes here. All right, Moreno, we're both cutting Cheez-Its, and it's an easy cut, and you think it's like the greatest food in the world, right?
I mean, it's definitely one of the best snacks out there. So I'm keeping pizza, cheeseburger, cheese fries, macaroni and cheese, and Cheez-Its.
Oh my gosh. So cheesecake, you're out on cheesecake.
Yeah, I'm not a huge there's only one cheesecake that I will eat, and it's a s'mores one that the Cheesecake Factory has. Other than that,
Okay.
I don't like cheesecake. String cheese, I'll eat it, but don't need it. I'm actually not a big mozzarella sticks fan at all.
Okay.
Cheese and crackers, I would rather just have Cheez-Its. And grilled cheese, I do appreciate and enjoy, but I would rather also just have a burger. So at that point, I'm keeping a burger over the grilled cheese, and then I can have my Cheez-Its whenever I want a snack.
Let's look at some of these. Mike M's got keeping cheeseburger, pizza, cheesecake, cheese fries, and cheese and crackers. So Mike M is our first cheese and crackers fan here. Here, we'll get rid of the slide here so that Blake's face can come back in. Roger's got keeping pizza, grilled cheese, cheeseburger, cheesecake, and mac and cheese. So we're 0 for 2 on cheese that's making the list. Laura is eliminating cheesecake, grilled cheese, and cheese fries. Laura, that's only 3. You're cheating right now, Laura. You need 2 more on your list here. Oh my gosh. Hepatitis says, I would only keep pizza and Cheez-Its. Is this Scott's burner? Have we found Scotty's burner here? What's wrong? You're eliminating 8 of these items? It's crazy. Okay. Robert says,
I will say though too, before you read that one, sorry, is now that I'm thinking about it, cheese and crack, like, are we counting like which we probably would have to, like charcuterie? If that's going out with cheese and crackers, then
get it out of here.
Then I might do a swap and get rid of Cheez-Its and keep the charcuterie, because I do enjoy like different types.
So you would get rid of Cheez-Its though. Cheez-Its was 5th on your list of 5, huh?
Yo, yeah, because I'm not like a huge snack person. I don't eat like a box of Cheez-Its as my lunchtime meal type thing. But yeah, if charcuterie has to get eliminated, then I would bring cheese and crackers in and get rid of
We'll see if our
Cheez-Its.
guy Jason's in here. Jason's a big charcuterie board guy, so he won't be happy. Robert is our first vote for Cheez-Its here, Matt. He says string cheese, cheesecake, mozzarella sticks, cheese and crackers, and cheese fries have to go. Ederico is keeping cheeseburger, pizza, cheese fries, mozzarella sticks, and mac and cheese. Some of these are funny. Laura says she also makes a pumpkin cheesecake, which I'm going to be honest, Laura, pumpkin flavored anything you could count me out of. Yeah, there we go. Here we go. Last one. Michael, cheeseburger, pizza, mozzarella sticks, grilled cheese. The rest are garbage. Wow. He doesn't. Oh, he said, okay, he has cheeseburger on there. Man, mac and cheese grilled, mac and cheese is garbage. I mean, it's crazy. Nacho. Mike wants to know where nacho cheese ranks. That's a great question. I'd be cutting nacho cheese, but I'm pro nacho cheese.
What if we threw a Cheetos on there too? That would make it a little tougher.
I think I'd still cut it. I think.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, sour cream and cheddar chips would probably be the closest that you would get to snack foods that would make me reconsider. But there you go. So. Anyways, quesadillas. That's a great one. Quesadilla absolutely should have been on the list, and that's on the keep side. Mozzarella sticks might be getting mozzarella sticks or grilled cheese is getting the axe. Quesadilla is like a top 3 cheese food. Pizza, cheeseburger, and I think I'd probably have quesadilla 3rd on that list.
Can we count a quesadilla as a grilled cheese here? If we're gonna do like a hot dog as a sandwich kind of thing, like.
Well, it's not a sandwich, so
a sandwich.
We're not doing that.
Anyways, well, there you go. Blake thinks a quesadilla is a sandwich, for anybody that was wondering that. We'll close on that. I love that we got to talk about how Blake thinks 4 of the 10 best vegetables are all potatoes, different kinds of potatoes, but somebody pointing out that the nutritional value of potatoes not high, which not surprising here. But anyways, we appreciate everybody for joining us. One of the longest shows, if not the longest show we've all ever done. So thank you. That's Matt Moreno. That's Blake Williams. I'm Jeff Spiegel. As always, check out DodgerBlue.com. Post-game recaps, morning after, sort of social media catch-ups, all sorts of stuff on there, as well as breaking news, write-ups from guys like Matt, Blake, Daniel, and Scott. Make sure you're subscribing the notification bell here on our YouTube channel, Dodger Blue 1958. You can subscribe and ring the notification bell. Tons of content coming at you this week. I believe we've got an interview with Andy McCullough coming up about his book on Clayton Kershaw. I don't know if there's a better person to be interviewing right now with all that we're talking about with Clayton Kershaw. So I can't wait to talk to him about Kershaw and what he thinks about everything that is going on. We might have Lance Bresdowski back on to talk through pitching stuff because he was great last month. We've got a Ron Say interview still to post. So tons of content. Make sure you subscribe here. And of course, if you're a podcast person, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcast, please find us, subscribe, rate, review. We would greatly appreciate it. Folks, enjoy the rest of your night. The Dodgers win again on a Sunday, 13-game lead in the National League West and a magic number of just 7. Enjoy the rest of your night, folks. As always, go Dodgers.